Hey everybody, our artist this week is Klee, and we learned a lot about his artwork yesterday, specifically talking about line. But you'll also notice that in many of his pieces, he has this beautiful colored background. This isn't present in all of them. It was in about half of them that we looked at. And while we are focusing on line this week, we are also going to learn how to do a watercolor wash as a colorful background. So let's get started. The materials you will need for this include watercolor paints, and we're just going to focus on the primary colors here, so red, yellow, and blue. A water cup, and a brush. You may need to share your paints and your water with a neighbor. And a piece of paper towel will be helpful as well. We're going to be using actually a thick drawing paper. This is not in fact watercolor paper, but it will work for creating a watercolor wash in this case. So we're going to get started. What we're going to be doing is placing wet paint onto dry paper. We'll do that by getting our paintbrush nice and watery, dipping it into our desired color. So we're going to use one color at a time only. I'm going to start with yellow. So go ahead and get a lot of moisture into the paint so that you can work with it. If it's too dry, you won't be able to work with it very well. And then we're simply going to keep the paper dry and just run your brush across it. It makes this really nice color. When you start to see that the color is getting dull or too watery, go ahead and reload your brush. I'm not pushing too hard here, just gently. Just be gentle with your brush so that we keep them in good condition. So you see it might take 3 or 4 times to fill up your paper. And you can choose to leave the edges white, or you can go all the way to the edges with your paint. Something that Klee does quite often is incorporates more than one color in his background colors. Oops. Actually, in all of these, so you've got red and yellow, blue and red, green and yellow here. So I think what I'll do is I'll go back in with a second color to make a new color, kind of do a little color mixing here. Now if the yellow is wet at all, this will run a little bit. I'm just going to try to create a nice line here. Make it a little bit asymmetrical, a little uneven. Notice that I'm washing my brush off before I touch the new color. So if you have any paint on your brush, please rinse it off first before dipping it in the next color. And you can continue this until you're happy with it, but more than 2 layers can start to make the paper very wobbly. This paper isn't made to hold a lot of water, so I would stop after about 2 layers here. If you start to see the paper become translucent, a little bit see-through, that means it's getting overloaded with water. So I'm just going to leave it here like this. And I've got kind of a nice background going on. So that's just a watercolor wash using the wet on dry technique, wet paint on dry paper. When you're done, rinse out your brush. You can dab it off on the paper towel to dry it, put it back in the cup, rinse out your water cup and refill it for the next class, and you can leave your paints on your tables today. And that is how we will prepare our background, and then we will add some line work over top. So the next thing we'll talk about is how to create line work in the style of Paul Klee.